What's up everybody, how's it going? Today I've got an exciting video. I'm here with Jorge. He is an ex-Amazon software engineer. He also has a very big YouTube channel that you may have heard of, Latin Coder. I'll put the link in the description below and in the comments below. He's also soon going to be joining Microsoft as a software engineer. And today I've got him here on the channel and he's going to be sharing some of his experiences at Amazon. So with that, Jorge, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what your background is.
Hi, thanks, Clement. I really appreciate like the invitation to collaborate on your channel. My name is Jorge. I am a software engineer. I have been developing applications since 2012, and I first started like working in Mexico in some smaller companies. Then I joined Intel in Mexico back in 2015, and then I made the jump a few years later to Amazon in late 2018. So I worked for Amazon for about a year and like 4 months, something like that. So my last day at Amazon was in March.
Well, so I'm curious, like, were you in the Seattle office, the headquarters?
Yeah. Actually, I was. I landed in Seattle, and basically I just started working for Amazon in this like physical stores organization, which is like kind of the org that has the businesses like Amazon Go. I wonder if you have heard of that.
Is that the shop where you go in and you don't need to pay like with a credit card, it just charges you automatically?
Yeah, that's the one. Basically, that's one of the businesses inside like this org, and it's a pretty interesting company, I'd say. I mean, like once I got in, I got my shock about, you know, like the culture, like landing into the US. There were like a lot of challenges, like it was my first job where I would like be working with people in like 100% in English all day. The engineering is like top-notch engineering. I guess I'd say I learned a lot in that company. I mean,
it's super cool because like I think people, when you think of Amazon or all these big tech companies, you tend to think of their main product. So like I tend to think of Amazon as the e-commerce website, and maybe these days AWS, Amazon Web Services, but it never really hits you that there's an entire team working on things like Amazon Go. And you were a software engineer, right? So like what part of the stack did you work on for this?
Well, I was working kind of in the back end. Amazon Go was only one of the businesses. Like another business might be like Amazon 4-Star, which is like this physical store where you can go in and you find like highly rated products, and basically you find a lot of cool stuff there. And that business is also part of what you would say is like a physical store that you can just go in and purchase things. It's not like, as you say, like the website, And I was working in the back end.
Would you say that Amazon is very engineering driven, or is it more like product driven, or driven by something else? Because like at Google, the reason I'm asking this is that at Google, we were very engineering driven. Like a lot of decisions felt like they came first from the engineers, but that wasn't necessarily the case at Facebook. Right. I'm curious how it was at Amazon.
Well, I'd say that Amazon is kind of the main motive how like things are driven by is by their customers, right? So there's a few principles that they call like leadership principles, and these are like the main motives of how like things are done at Amazon. This is what gives value to their products, right? So I'd say, why would I say like it's driven by customer? Of course, it has a lot to do with product, but it's also like you don't wanna like deliver a product if you don't know that that's gonna be like the best possible product for the customers. At the same time, I would say that you have to put a lot of engineering into making that the best product possible. So you just don't wanna say like, okay, we have like this product that it's functional and it serves the customer. You want to do it right, and you want to like save as much as cost possible so that you and at the same time like deliver the best product possible to the customer. So I'd say like that's the main motive, how it's driven. I'd say it's really engineering heavy company, even though from the outside it can be perceived as a like product oriented company. I think that's where Amazon like lands. I think it's a good thing for customers. Like even before working for Amazon and like talking for me, like in my own opinion, I thought that my perspective of Amazon is that they really take care of their customers, and that's usually what you'll find people saying, and why like things like reviews and like customer feedback is so important for them, and that the consequence of that like is great engineering, right? So that's what I think drives how they do things.
The excellency in the engineering basically allows some of these leadership principles or some of these customer driven things to actually be a thing or happen. But I'm curious about the leadership principles. I've heard a lot about them. I've heard that they're really ingrained in the culture, that you almost refer to them every day. Is that true? Like, did you find yourself in meetings or in code reviews referencing or referring to these leadership principles?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like your day-to-day like thing. In every meeting, I say in almost every meeting, I heard at least a couple of them every day. Like
interesting.
Yeah, of course, I'd say I cannot generalize. I only work in one team. I only work in one team. I did collaborate with other teams. Like even if I was belonging to my own team, you can work with multiple teams. And my perspective from many of the teams is that you see these principles like almost every day. Like every day you'll find them. I cannot generalize this for the whole company, of course, because I didn't work like in every team that there is, but I'd say that it's fair to say that this is something that you'll find in your everyday routine, right?
What would be an example of one of the leadership principles and how it was used like in a meeting? And you don't have to give something that necessarily happened, but just how it could happen.
Well, there's one. It's one I actually liked a lot. It's called customer obsession, and basically that's something that you can use. Let's say if you want to hypothetically, right? Let's say you're designing some software, you're designing some solution, some feature, and when you design something that's gonna be used like let's say a service that is gonna be used by other teams or by your customers. Like your customers could be not only like you don't think about the customer about like someone that's paying that doesn't work for Amazon that's paying to buy a product. It's not only that. Like your customer might be your peers, like other teams, like people who use your services, even like that is your customer, right? Because they are using something that you are providing. And if you design, let's say a service, a feature that you want to think in them, like how they are going to use it. So that's when you think about customer obsession. Like you have to be customer obsessed because you want to make their life like easier, like their whatever they're doing, whatever they expect, you want it to be the best. And if you are doing like designing something, you have to think about that. So that comes in that's a way how you can interpret like customer obsession. Another one that I also like really liked a lot, it's called dive deep. And that has to do with understanding why things happen, like how things happen, like why they happen. Let's say that you want to understand a service that another team owns, right? Like you do not own that service, but perhaps you use that service, right? Or perhaps you find a bug and you want to fix it. You want to make sure you understand like the cause of things, like why that bug happened, like what are the consequences, like how is it being like triggered, to happen. And to understand everything, that's what you call like, okay, we have to dive deep into this and find out like the root cause of this bug, or we have to find out, we have to dive deep and really understand the internals of that service I want to use. Like that's how you use this one. And I particularly like identify with this one a lot because that's something on my first 6 months, I'd say, when I was like in this phase of like adapting and learning like the Amazon ways of doing things. Well, I have to do a lot of like research, investigation, like learn a lot, and then dive deep is something, it was an everyday activity, right? You have to dive deep into things and understand how they work, like what causes things. So that's really important. That's another one I really like. And there are more principles, but I'd say like these two, for me, I identify myself with them because I don't just like apply that when I was at Amazon. I apply them like even in my personal projects, like I apply them when I'm like studying something, when I want to learn something new. So you don't have to work for Amazon to actually learn these things. These are like public principles that you can just Google and learn them and apply them. You can figure out ways to apply them. There's another one I like to talk about that I also like really like. It's called Frugality. And this one is really important because it's about doing more with less. And I have seen like random comments in the internet, like people saying like, hey, is that like, okay, then I have to just like spend less resources or have a smaller budget, or like spend less money in something. And it's not about that. I want to talk about a little experience I had recently on a personal project. I was designing like this system, like it was like a bot, and I designed this system like in my free time. I was no longer working for Amazon, and I decided, okay, I have to do something. And I designed this system, and I make like a design doc, and I estimated some cost. And I just to give an example, like running the system. Initially, it was going to cost me around like, let's say $20 a month, right? And I asked a friend for feedback, and he gave me feedback on that design, and we made like some decisions that would lower that cost. Like you could do the same thing, but instead of $20, it was going to cost less than $5 or less than, like even less than that. Depending on, of course, like average, worst, and best case scenarios, right? And that's what frugality is about. It's about accomplishing the same things with less resources. So in this case, if I wanted to run the same system and obtain the same result, I would be spending less money. And in order to do that, you have to put engineering work, right? You have to invest time and and deep dive to understand how things work and how you can use that information that you find in order to do the same thing with less. And you don't want to stop thinking about your customer, right? You want to still think, okay, I want that my customer has like the same value, and I also want to, perhaps, let's say if I were to publish this system, I want to provide a better service, a reliable service. And a better way to do that is making sure that my costs are lower. Because if my costs are lower, then I can use those resources in other stuff to help and provide to my customers. So that's what frugality is about.
So it's not about necessarily saying like, oh, I'm going to cut all my costs left and right just to save money. It's more, can you achieve something in a way that thing costs less, either from a financial point of view or from a resource point of view, maybe time point of view or effort point of view. So that way you can allocate resources better elsewhere, and all the while you're still thinking about the customer and all that.
Exactly.
It's really interesting because like these leadership principles, on the one hand, it's nothing necessarily new. Like this is something that a lot of companies have. They have, mission statements or words that they live by, values that they live by. But here it's really cool to see them applied so much every day. And I've heard, similar things that you've been describing from other people who worked at Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. It's basically, I would say, in the DNA of the company. I mean, knowing people that work in other teams across Amazon, like different orgs, I'd say you can find this stuff like present in a whole of different, situations and teams. So yeah, definitely. I know some people that work, for instance, like in the Kindle team. And or in Kindle org, right? There are, of course, many teams, but I know that they like take these things really seriously. Like they do apply these things in their everyday work, And yeah, sure, it's part of the. I'd say it's part of the DNA of the company.
And so, on a final note, how would you describe your experience at Amazon overall? Are you happy? Do you feel like you learned a lot?
Oh man, I learned a lot of stuff. Like I couldn't describe how much I learned in my time there. I think I'm very happy with that. And one of the reasons I'd say I got an opportunity in my career to work with incredibly talented people incredibly talented engineers. It was for me was just more like a lot more than that. I mean, it was my first job outside of Mexico, my first job within the U.S. Um,
Right.
and when I joined, like from day one, I was like learning every day like something new. I changed a lot of things that I used to think. I changed like some of my ways of thinking about problems because this was also my first role as a software, like a generic software engineer, like a generalist. This role of being like a generalist software engineer for me was like a great learning experience because my background didn't I'd say like prepare me for that. So it was for me it was like starting again and learning a lot of new things every day, like how to incorporate like testing, development, ensuring that products are whatever service or application I'm doing, it's working, and how to make sure that that is delivered correctly, how all the pipeline from the development to when it reaches production stages. There is a lot of stuff in there and a lot of things that you can learn, and also applying not just like technical knowledge but also like soft skills like how to apply like the leadership principles, how to take on meetings and be more effective. And for me, it was a learning experience that I think I grew up in my career thanks to them. So I say, yeah, it's a great company. It's a company that if you ever have the chance to work there, I think you can learn a lot. And I really appreciate that. I think I will always be thankful in that sense because if I hadn't had that experience, then I wouldn't say I learned the things that I know now, right? And I gain like a lot of confidence also by working in there because I think it was a place where I work with people who is so much have a lot of talent and a lot of knowledge, and working and learning from them. I think it gives you like a lot of I don't know how to describe it, but a lot of confidence in how to do your work.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you're describing an experience that's very similar to the one I had at Google, especially, which was my first big tech company.
Yeah.
You really feel like you go inside these companies and come out like 10 times or 20 times better as a software engineer and as a like person in general.
Totally, I agree with that. I mean, just as a quick anecdote, I was once talking to a friend who also came from Mexico, and I also had a background working in other companies that were not, like one of like these big tech companies, and we were saying hey, like how do you feel like your first year at Amazon? I remember this was when I reached my first year at Amazon back in 2019, and we were saying like, yeah, I feel like in this year I have learned like at least like 3 or 5 years like in any other company that like the ones I used to be before, right? It's like, yeah, I feel like I learned a lot much more in 1 year than I learned like, I don't know, like in college or
it's like accelerated learning.
Exactly, like things like that. And it doesn't mean that every other experience is not valuable. Of course it is, but I think there are like some like things that you find in these companies that will give you like that acceleration, right? And I think that's pretty valuable, and I think that's why it's worth it, because they hire so many talented people and you get the chance to work with a lot of talented people in the same team, and with that you can find something to learn like every single day from anyone. I mean, from people that is more experienced than you, that is also like less experienced than you, like in terms of time, like people overall is pretty smart, and that can be challenging at times, but the good thing is that you learn a lot from people, and every single day. I wouldn't lie about that. Like every day I literally learn something.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to that from my experiences at other big tech companies. And It sounds like Amazon was a blast. Thanks so much for sharing, Jorge.
I really appreciate Clement, and yeah, it is. I recommend people to, to interview there. Maybe they can study using Algo Expert.
Yes, if you're preparing for your Amazon interviews, go check out algoexpert.io.
Yeah.
So that was Jorge's experience at Amazon. Sounds like Amazon was a really fantastic place to work at. We also filmed a couple of videos on his channel. Go check them out. I'll put the links in the description below and in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.